I was informed that he wanted Nicole and I in the movie, and I read the script, and Nick was shooting Portrait of a Lady at the time, and I'd read it there, and he said, please have it, you know, I'll give it to you the day before, or maybe even, he said, you keep it the weekend, then we'll meet, you know, if you want to meet me in a few days. But I just also, I wanted to show to him that I was trustworthy, that he could trust me, that, you know, he could tell me anything, I would never discuss it with anyone. And so I read the script and flew immediately to where he was, to his property, and I landed on his property in this helicopter. And I said, look, I'm sorry about this, but otherwise it's a 6-hour drive, and I've got, you know, my babies are here, and Nick, and I couldn't figure out another way how to get there quickly and then get back. And of course, you know, he'd set up the landing pad, and I remember the helicopter coming in onto his property, and he'd given me the GPS coordinates to give to the pilot, and told me, sent me a diagram of where he wanted me to land the airplane, the helicopter. And I remember just landing in, and there he was, just waiting, just alone in the garden as it came down. And the helicopter came down, and we discussed the helicopter and what kind it was and how many hours that I'd flown in these helicopters. And he walked me around the grounds, and I just remember thinking, this guy's kind of a magical, wonderful guy, you know. And I was so nervous. I remember talking to Sydney and saying, listen, what happens if I don't like a word? Or I mean, what's it going to be like? I mean, can I, you know, what do I say to him? I don't want to offend him. And Sydney was thinking, just, you know, he's you know, and he's human, you know, you just talk to him. I say, oh yeah, of course, I just talked to him, you know. I just talked to Stanley. He was an idol of mine growing up, and one of the most dramatic moments in my life is, and I'll never forget, it was 2001 when I was on my father's shoulders, because it was just sold out in this biggest theater I'd ever been to in my life, and it was my sister's birthday, my little sister's birthday, and they took us to see 2001: A Space Odyssey, the whole family. And movies were kind of a big deal in our family, and I sat on my father's shoulders through this picture. And you know, even at 7, you don't comprehend, but even then it had this impact on my life. I found myself lying in front in the yard at night in the snow and looking up at the stars and thinking, you know, what am I going to do with my life? What is it about? What is going on? Why am I here? And I think that he had a huge impact at that stage, and now I'm flying in this helicopter, you know, on his property and having conversations with him about film. And then kind of the last thing we discussed was the movie. So finally, after a while, you know, I went into his kitchen, and Christian had made food for us, and he was absolutely charming and engaging, and just not judgmental, just almost projecting, you know, feeling with me of it's, you know, it's trying to, I think he realized, sensed, maybe this is just me putting that in there, but I think he sensed how nervous I was, and that it was okay to talk, to be candid with him, and he wanted that, he invited that, and so we discussed the script, and he wanted to know what, you know, I can't even remember what I said about it, just different story points of, did I understand this, and was I confused about anything? But he first allowed me to talk. He didn't, you know, probe, really. And I took off in the helicopter, and it was over too quickly for me. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a real adventure. This is going to be a great adventure of my life. The themes are universal when you look at, you know, jealousy, obsession, you know, fantasies, sex. I mean, it's every individual understands this, and some people don't want to ever feel like they have fantasies, or that it's the devil or it's bad. And I, you know, right away when I read the script, you know, you're thinking, okay, Nick and I are going to make this together. Okay, wow, all right. And I felt that we have a wonderful communication and bond between us, but it was going to test that to the limit. And because as actors, you know, there's a natural curiosity about about these things and about relationships in general. I mean, that's what we do. That's what fascinates us, and why I'm an actor. It fascinates me about other people. And now here it is with his wife. It was both a plus because we could invest aspects of our own relationship into this, and our own understanding into these characters. And I know that that's also, you know, even though Stanley would say, well, that's just an added bonus, that was definitely something that he counted on and wanted. We told him right from the beginning, whatever it takes. And the two of us together, you know, you have to say, I'm glad it didn't happen in the first year, you know, years of our marriage. It would have been very difficult to confront those issues, and even though we had a very strong bond, but you know, we're still. It would have been, you know, it would have been very difficult for us to do that. I don't know what would have happened. I'm not saying that our marriage would have broken up, but I'm just saying it would have been much more difficult. And even there were times where it was very difficult during the making of the movie. Times where, you know, the characters are at odds, and all of these raw, you know, emotions are there, and you can't, you know, when you're in the middle of a scene, you know, especially the way Stanley's working, the way I work, you don't just fire it off and go, okay, honey, what do you think? You know, you're respectful and disciplined about it, but it does invade your life. It is there. It is pervasive. Especially, I worked every single day, except for only a few days on the movie, and there I was with Stanley, and it was me and Stanley in the trailer, and me and Stanley, you know, and Nick, a lot of the times, and it was there, and. You know, I think he knew that what I was going through, and Stanley, I think, understood that ideas cannot be forced. You get an idea when you get an idea. You must pose the question, and eventually it comes to you. So when we were working on it, and we were committed to this process with him, and we were committed never to give up, no matter how. Sometimes playing this character was infuriating and frustrating. Playing, you know, Bill. There's not an outlet with Bill. I think by the time I got to that final scene of the movie, you know, the pent up emotion inside was just so ready to come out. It was like a dam breaking when I played that scene. It just, you know, I was like this. You know, you have to put yourself into that state where it wasn't a performance, where it just was. You existed. But it was more, which, you know, even Stanley talked about, it was more than just existing. It's got to be interesting. You know, he was looking for what we all look for in for ourselves, that you can't force, is that time that it happens, that it's unexpected, it just occurs. And whatever Stanley felt to be the most interesting is you know, he wanted to explore that. And I was interested as the actor to see, where is it going to go? Where are we going to go with this? What's going to happen? How is this scene going to end up? I was just as curious, and I think that Stanley was just as curious, although he knew thematically the tone that he wanted, and he never took time to really discuss it, because it just became this almost understood. You know, we didn't talk about the meaning of the scene. He was always, you know, would talk about, he's kind of almost pragmatic about it, what made sense. And then looking for something for us to bring to the table to take it to that next place. You had to have this calm exterior, and yet underneath you had to keep those fires stoked. And he, you know, would talk about it, and we'd discuss it, that it's not something that you wanted to have to perform. It had to be, and I wanted to go there. I wanted to just be that, you know, for him, for the movie, for myself. It was, and that's what happens when you start working on it. You start going there. It just works on you. You didn't want to take it home, but it did. And Stanley, where, you know, I'd hear the stories about driving people mad, doing that it was actually very much the opposite with him. That when I was tired and I wanted to keep working, I found him saying, you know, I mean, literally, you know, I'd be there and he'd put his hand in my hand and hold it, and he'd say, Tom, now, I understand, you know, you want to keep working, but we're going to be here tomorrow, and it's better just to get it right. And there's no need doing it if you're too tired or you're not feeling, he was always, have you eaten? He was, he knew what, I think, he understood, I think, and respected where we were going and the commitment that we had towards him and towards the film. And he wanted to make sure that I didn't go too hard, and he would work consciously on keeping me relaxed. I remember at some point when we were going along, and I just felt, you feel frustrated at times playing a character like that for so long and finding, because every scene, Stanley would say, look, we got to earn every scene with this character, every single moment with this character. And he knew that, in times when I just get frustrated with myself, and that at times that we couldn't get it, you know what I mean? It was just like, fuck. It just, or you just know when you don't have that fire burning that day, or if I was tired, it just, and I bring it upon myself, because I demand a lot of myself. And I know there were a lot of people in my life that were saying, when are you coming back? Because I've got a company that I had, and when are you coming back? And I remember talking to Stanley, and I said, Stanley, look, I don't care how long it takes, but I have to know, are we going to finish in 6 months? This is after shooting. Am I going to finish? But can I set meetings and have people, because people were waiting and writers were waiting and people that I was paying? Because I said, Stanley, I don't care. Tell me it's going to be 2 years, Stanley. And he'd say, oh, Tom, don't be ridiculous. I mean, if it takes that long, then what? Everything they say about us is true. And I would laugh, and I say, okay, all right, Stanley. So we're finished by this date, and of course, there we were shooting, 6 months later. It wasn't 2 years, but the last day of shooting, a day that that I, had both looked forward to and dreaded. Looked forward to because I just, there was enough with Dr. Bill in some ways, and dreaded because I didn't want the experience with Stanley to end. And I remember saying, hey, I was walking out and I gave him a kiss and a hug, and I said, I love you, Stanley. You know that. And he turned to me, and he was just right there, and it was just a quiet moment. It was late at night, and he said, I love you too. And he said, thank you. And I said, thank you. And it was much like the moment of of the last time we spoke. When he makes a movie, it is his life in the same way, and I respect that. I would have, walked the mile, he's worth it. It's worth it to go this journey with this man. It is, and the two of us together, let's explore these issues. Let's look at them. Let's journey, to be able to journey with one of the great minds and great filmmakers of the 20th century, and a man who, for me, I never ever thought that I could ever be in a movie, let alone here I am making a movie with this man that I watched his movie when I was on my father's shoulders, and I would hear people say, well, what about the money? I just thought, what, these people don't know who I am. It's everything as an actor that you would want it to be, and more, and challenging, and and unpleasant at times, but it's wonderful, and I wanted it, and that's how I felt about the whole experience. I wanted to go there with Stanley Kubrick and be a part of one of his visions. He used to say, oh, you're so good in this movie, you're going to be surprised, and he'd say that to Nick. He says, you're going to be really proud of this movie. It's a great movie, Tom. This is a great movie. he was just so sure of, and had such a belief in himself and the story that he was telling in his movie. And it wasn't bravado, it was absolute belief in himself and what this movie was. And when you see the movie, it's a movie that you can't just see once. It's a movie, to try to review it after one sitting, my hat is off to you. I do not know how an individual can do that. It's a picture that absorbs you, and a picture that demands an audience participation and allows the audience to be the experts. And it's not a film that I made the movie. You know, I read the script. I was there every day, and yet I had to sit through it, 2-3 times, and every single time I found something surprising in what he had done. And that is a tremendous achievement, and he was a master. Finally, months and months later, we were working on an entirely different scene. And he said, I'm sending over the scene to you both. We were in the trailer. And he said, it's coming over. And then he called back on my mobile. He was in his office, just, away in his office. And I was in the trailer, kind of in the back by the stage, where we lived, with the family for so many, many months. And he said, okay, now, Tom, you and Nicole, don't read the page. Don't go to the end. I want you to read it from the beginning to the end. Don't jump ahead. I said, Stanley, I'm not going to jump. He said, yeah, but I just want to make sure you're not going to jump ahead. I said, okay, I promise. It's just, also it was masterful in how he called to see, because then I just couldn't wait to get to that page, And, and he sent it over, and he said, and it said, over there in the toy store, and it was just as written, pretty much the scene as written. And we turned it over, and I read the final thing, and I just went, wow. One of the best endings I've ever read. Just absolutely perfect. And we called him on the phone, and he said, what do you think? It's pretty good, isn't it? It's pretty good. I said, it is absolutely perfect. I shared 3 years of my life with this man, and
it must have been an unbelievable thing to have heard that he died so soon after the film had been finished. What was that to your immediate reaction?
My immediate reaction was one of absolute shock. And disbelief. And even when I went to the funeral and going to the funeral, I was not in a good way, and I was very concerned about Nick and very concerned about Christian and his family, and concerned about the movie, because I know what it meant to him and what it meant to me, and my wife, my co-star, my love, and I still even went to the funeral thinking, somewhere it was, it was ridiculous, because somewhere still inside I thought, and Nick and I were talking, that it's not true. Somewhere deep inside I wanted to believe this is not true, that I'm going to go and I will show up at the house and he will be there. It wasn't, it was illogical, and it wasn't something that I actually, but somewhere there was a part of me that went there, and not until we went into the room where we'd have dinner with Christian, and we drank, when Nick and I were first there, in the fireplace, and there was Stanley and Christian, and and there was the coffin, and it just was absolutely absurd. Probably forever they'll be writing about Stanley and his movies and evaluating and looking at it, and Stanley's movies don't age. You look at them and you still find things in them every time you go to look at it. Whatever point, it's like a great novel. Wherever you are, in your life, it means something different, or you puts you in a different. It adjusts your reference points, and it is what it is. You know, I call it Kubrickian. He was very Kubrickian.